Welcome to Bearing Light, a podcast of the Georgia Bulletin, news source of the Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta. I'm editor Nicole Golden. Reporter Andrew Nelson is here today to introduce a recent interview. How are you today?
Great. Happy New Year to you, Nicole.
And a Happy New Year to you. I hope it will be a great one for all of us.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
I have high hopes. Andrew, you recently sat down with the director of the Bearing Witness Institute of Marist School, Brendan Murphy. The Institute works to promote understanding and connection between people of different faiths. Can you share a little history as a preview to your conversation?
Absolutely. It was a very interesting conversation. Our exchange included a little bit of art history, church history, and then some local conversations between faith communities. It's a really revealing interview about what's happening in our local Catholic Church. So I think people should have a listen.
Thank you, and we hope listeners will learn more from this conversation with educator Brendan Murphy.
Hi, this is Andrew Nelson, a reporter at the Georgia Bulletin. I'm here with Brendan Murphy, the founder of the Bearing Witness Institute. He's a graduate of the St. Pius X High School, a longtime educator at the Marist School, 30 plus years, I think. And he is a teacher who has earned numerous accolades for what he does in the classroom here at the Atlanta school. Thank you for joining us.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. Honestly, Andrew, it's a real honor to be here with the Archdiocese today in this podcast. This is a great opportunity. I could talk forever about the Bearing Witness Institute for sure, but I had to confess at the outset that I've never done this before, a podcast series, or a podcast rather. And so this is not my specialty, so I hope I don't butcher all of this. But thank you so much for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, great. No, you haven't said that. We're both on the same path.
Oh, good.
That's great.
Good.
It'll be wonderful. We'll ask for some grace from our listeners.
That sounds good.
Let's just kind of talk a little bit. What experience made you realize that this program, Bearing Witness Institute, at Marist School, needed to exist?
Well, gosh, that's a great question. When I first started teaching at Marist, so I was hired to teach world history as I was just wrapping up my senior year at Notre Dame. I was hired to teach world history at this Atlanta area school called Marist. And sometime during that first year of mine in that world history class, towards the end of the year, we were doing a unit on World War II, which meant that I had to do a lesson on the Holocaust. And I had studied the Holocaust, a little bit here and there. As an undergrad, I majored in history and all of that. But I had not, of course, studied that particular history enough to do a lesson on it. And so I used to do my lesson planning down at the Candler School of Theology down in Emory on occasion. And this particular night, as first-year teachers do, they have to sit down every evening and create these lesson plans. There at the Candler School of Theology, I started pulling off books from the shelves on the Holocaust. And I found this book written by an historian named John Weiss called The Ideology of Death. And it was a detailed study on the history of anti-Semitism. And there was a chapter in there on the long and tragic history of Christian anti-Judaism. And it was a devastating shock to me to learn how, for nearly 2,000 years within Christianity, there had become such animosity between Christians and Jews, and that Christians had promoted anti-Judaism in ways that, from the top down. And this was something that was never really taught to me before. And as I say, it was kind of a devastating shock to be confronted with this history within our church. And I felt this sense that this must be something that our students have to learn. We'll say more about what that history is, I hope, a little bit later. But so after that first year of teaching, I wrote an official proposal and submitted it to my administration seeking permission to create, in fact, a seminar class on the Holocaust. because I could not teach this particular history, the history of Christian anti-Semitism, in a world history setting where we have, as you might appreciate, about 11 minutes to teach the Holocaust, right? So it took some convincing, but the administration back then, this is 1995, 96, the administration saw fit to approve the idea. And I think we opened up a section around the 97 school year, just a few seniors, third term class. And that class has long since become my main work at the school. And it has led my professional life in directions that I never could have anticipated. And it's gotten to the point over the last 10 years or more where I've begun to seek for ways to promote this work beyond the campus of Marist, right? Because the history that we're confronting in my seminar class on the Holocaust is one that all of us should be confronting, as it were. So the hope of the Bearing Witness Institute in many ways is to create kind of a community classroom, right, well outside the grounds of Marist School or my own classroom, and to carry this story that we're telling in this class across the country.
I participated, or I observed your presentation. Mm-hmm. It was excellent.
Thank you.
It was excellent.
Thank you.
Really strong, and I learned so much in that time. So I can only imagine the value that people can see from it. But why don't we take a little step back and tell us about the Bearing Witness Institute, kind of what its goals are, how it works, kind of what you hope for it. Because you've just had your 1 year anniversary. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us about it. Well, like what it does, things like that. How it works.
Well, let me begin with the name, if I can.
Please.
So the official name of the Institute, as I've created it at Marist, in partnership, of course, with the administration and our communications and advancement teams at the school, who have been just an extraordinary collective source of inspiration for me. I have some of the most amazing colleagues at that school. The official name of the Institute is the Bearing Witness Institute for Interreligious and Ecumenical Dialogue. It's a very long name.
Yes.
And we simply just refer to it as the Bearing Witness Institute. And I chose this phrase, bearing witness, because it's layered to me with great meaning. So witness, for example, is not just someone who sees something. But in the original, Latin etymology of the word, a witness is one who sees something and is, changed, impacted, affected in some way by what they've witnessed. And so the hope of the Bearing Witness Institute is to develop programming that reaches audiences in that place where truth is kept. That something resonates in their hearts and minds about the work that we're doing. And oftentimes what we find when we, as I say, look into those places in our hearts and minds, what we find is, that line, between hope and despair, that line between good and evil, that line does not separate, as we might say, us versus them, whoever they may be. But that line runs straight through the middle of every one of us. And of course, what we bear, right, bearing witness, is the burden of responsibility, of choice, right? Because, of course, in effect, we choose from which side of that line we live our lives, right? And Marist, for me, is the perfect place, by the way, for this institute on so many levels. I have to say, I started thinking about creating this Bearing Witness Institute maybe about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. And my thinking led me to believe that I might just leave Marist, retire from that community, and create my own 501c3 nonprofit and serve as its director. But in thinking more about the potential for the Institute and thinking more about what its work might be, it was readily obvious to me that the idea was born in that community and that its envisioned programming aligns directly with the mission of the school. And so my heart began to feel like this needs to be something built in that community, because I find the mission of the Marist School to be just profoundly inspiring. And so I knocked on the door of my head of school, President J.D. Childs, who was only a few months on the job. He had just started, and his head was likely still spinning from all that he was trying to become accustomed to as the new head of school there. And I presented this idea to him of building the Bearing Witness Institute at the school. And we had these series of long conversations. And, you would appreciate that what I was proposing to him was something more akin to what you might see on a college campus, right? A center dedicated to a particular type of study. And of course, what I was proposing was not something on that scale, but nonetheless, this is something that you just don't often see, if at all, in a high school setting. And the long and short of it is that Mr. Childs, in the end, said to me, Brendan, even though this really has never been done before in a high school setting, that's no reason not to do it. And he immediately grasped not only how it directly relates to the mission of the school, but its potential for good. Mm-hmm. So here's the mission statement for the Bearing Witness Institute. I'm reading this off of my laptop because I want to make sure I get it exactly right.
Of course. Yeah. Read.
So it says, the Bearing Witness Institute seeks to combat hate and prejudice by building a community of conscience committed to promoting understanding among the Abrahamic faith traditions, so Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Institute pursues its work through interactive learning experiences, dialogues, and leadership training. So that's the mission of the Institute.
Sure. And let's talk about that. What are some ways that you introduce students? Because this is rooted in your experience with students. Mm-hmm. Talk about how you try to build those connections with your students, and then maybe translate it to the adults.
Yeah, so one of the major ambitions of the Bearing Witness Institute is developing a national piece-by-piece program. So this is a program that I've been running, directing, serving as the faculty advisor for at Marist for over 2 decades now. The program has been conducted in partnership with Marist and the Weber School and the Muhammad Schools of Atlanta in Decatur. And as I say, for over 20 years now, we 3 faculty advisors from each of these 3 schools annually select 15 upperclassmen students from our school, so of course 15 Catholic students, or other than Catholic, Protestant students too, from Marist. And then, of course, at the Weber School, their director selects 15 Jewish students, and at the Muhammad Schools of Atlanta, their director selects 15 Muslim students. And throughout the course of the academic year, we bring these 45 kids together for, friendship, conversation, dialogue. And I have to say, it has been, in my tenure at the school, the most extraordinary thing that I've been privileged to, I'll use this word again, witness as an educator. We 3 faculty advisors at the 3 schools, I should say, we are really, really good, okay, at getting out of the kids' way. We provide, as adults would, whatever structure might be needed, but the students themselves are tasked with building out the program. And so key to the piece-by-piece program are school visits. So I should say that the first visit that we do with the kids is a kind of orientation. It's a 2-hour Sunday afternoon at a local park in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. We often hire this gentleman who kind of moves the students through these getting-to-know-you exercises. It's just a lot of fun and hilarity. And at the end of which the students know one another's names, and so it's a good start. And then the following 3 events for the annual program are school visits. So we then host our guests, our new friends, at Marist throughout the entire course of a school day. They do not attend classes. That would be very boring. But the students themselves, as I say, the Marist students in this case being the hosts, they will, kind of develop the day's program. And, conversely, when we visit the other schools, their students do the same. And I have to tell you, it's just the most extraordinary thing to see these three groups of kids, come to get to know each other. I mean, look, I am a product of Catholic education my whole life. I attended, let me think here, St. Hugo of the Hills Catholic School in Detroit, Bloomfield Hills, went to St. John Vianney in Milwaukee, back to St. Hugo's in Detroit, went on to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, another great Catholic name, in Indianapolis. Went on to Cathedral High School in Indianapolis, and then, as mentioned, transferred into Atlanta and went to St. Pius. Went on to the University of Notre Dame, and later went on to get a master's degree in Catholic theology at a Jesuit school called Spring Hill, of course, as you know. And really, throughout all of those years of my youth and my development, I never met a Jewish student or a Muslim student. And that is not an uncommon experience in our parochial schools, right. Not only here in the Archdiocese of Atlanta, but arguably across the country. And as you would readily appreciate, that's a very real problem. And by the way, I should stress, in some ways it's the same for our Jewish and Muslim friends as well. They have oftentimes equally few opportunities to interact with Christian peers. So, of course, as you would appreciate, what Piece by Piece does is it jettisons, doesn't it? It debunks commonly held misconceptions and misunderstandings. And these kids, when they come together, they're so excited to get to know each other, to meet each other. The hospitality that they extend to one another is authentic and genuine. And, it's funny. Some people sometimes feel or say or argue that such interfaith dialogue can sometimes, leave the impression of watering down one's faith tradition, right? Where all that is stressed in such dialogue is what we have in common. But this is not so much the case in Piece by Piece. What we come to appreciate are those differences, and we come to admire and respect them, as it were. But I should stress, too, that Piece by Piece is a way for students to develop an even greater appreciation for their own faith tradition. So, for example, just 2 weeks ago at Marist, our Piece by Piece program, high school program, invited guests from Al-Falah Academy, this lovely school out in Norcross, tremendous community, and we've established a Piece by Piece relationship with them this year. And their students came to our campus, as I say, well, let me think, it was on the Feast of the Assumptions. That must have been December 8th, right, on that Monday. And they came to Mass with us. They didn't, I'm sorry, I said the Assumption.
Immaculate Conception.
Immaculate Conception, sorry.
I'm
getting my feast days mixed up.
Oh, that's right.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, it's great.
So they came to Mass with us that day. Of course, as you would expect, they did not participate in the Mass. They were observing the service, of course. And afterwards then, and this was something that the Marist students had agreed to do, and they wanted to give our Muslim friends a tour of Marist school.
Oh, wow.
But a Catholic tour. They wanted to identify for them sort of the Catholic iconography of the place and to explain not only who these people are, but, what a saint is, for example, or why there are so many images of Mary on our campus and
that's
all
fantastic.
of that. And, of course, what it did for the students is that it instilled in them this greater appreciation for something that they themselves don't often stop to think about, because it's like, the last thing a fish notices is the water, we say proverbially.
Exactly. Yes.
And so it afforded the students at Marist the opportunity to kind of notice the water and to appreciate how steeped Marist school is in their own faith tradition. And so in this way, it developed in them a greater appreciation for their own their own Catholicism.
Yeah. When I wrote the story about the 1-year anniversary of the Institute, and I spoke with some seniors from your school, they just only talked about how they had so much fun with their Muslim peers, and how they brought it back to themselves and their faith and what it meant for them and their. It wasn't so much a matter of. It was just a matter of like a sense of who they are, letting them know a little bit more about themselves. The students, that is. It was great.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, October 7th, the overwhelming tragedy of that day, has caused tremendous disruption in such interfaith dialogue all over the world, in fact. And our own program at Marist itself has been unable to avoid those ripple effects. And so we are hoping at the start of next school year that we can bring all 3 schools back together for dialogue, which is great.
That's great. That's great. On that theme of dialogue, because I remember we've spoken several times, you had told me about, speaking of dialogue between faith, an event that happened here in Atlanta in one of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar. A synagogue invited Archbishop Hartmeyer and Monsignor McNamee from the cathedral to speak, and you were the MC. Yeah. Right? Exactly. You kind of helped guide that conversation, which was a tremendous honor for the Archbishop, and I'm sure for the Monsignor to be speaking at the community on one of their holy days. What was that? What did you see in that exchange between adults? I mean, it's one thing for high schoolers to exchange, but like what, sitting on the platform or the panel where you were, kind of what was the vibe for you about how adults kind of engage each other that might not have the opportunity to?
Well, what struck me about that moment, so you're talking about an event that was held at the AA Synagogue last fall on Yom Kippur, where the rabbi there, Rabbi Lawrence Rosenthal, who is an extraordinary man, just a lovely rabbi and a great leader for that community, he simply extended the invitation to Archbishop Hartmeyer and to Monsignor McNamee from the Cathedral of Christ the King to come into their sanctuary.
Yes.
On the holiest day of the year.
Big deal.
Yes. And to,
tremendous honor.
Yes, and to share with their own congregates thoughts about forgiveness, which of course is such a theme in Yom Kippur. But I should stress that this event was preceded by a lecture of mine that I gave at the Cathedral of Christ the King.
Okay.
Gosh, let me think now, a year and a half ago, something along those lines. And it was a lecture, in essence, on Nostra Aetate.
Beautiful.
And it was a 4-hour lecture taught over 2 days. So 2 hours each. I think it was over 2 successive Monday evenings, if memory serves. And it was the Cathedral of Christ the King who reached out to me to ask if I would come in and teach the class. So this is a lecture series that I've been delivering all over the country, and it's one of the ambitions of the Bearing Witness Institute.
Right.
And it's the one that you referenced, that you had seen.
Yes.
At the
Alliance.
The Alliance Theater, that's right, a couple months ago. Well, the Cathedral of Christ the King reached out to me and asked if I would come in and teach this adult education class on Nostra Aetate, meaning the history of Christian anti-Semitism, and also the transformative theology of Nostra Aetate.
Yeah. Why don't you interject real quick?
Sure.
Tell us about Nostra Aetate. Can you just real brief for folks who don't know about it?
If I can.
Brief might be the right word.
That's right. This is a teacher talking.
That's
incredibly.
Right.
This podcast is going to go on for 3 hours. So to be brief, and this is a gross oversimplification
100%.
of this landmark statement, but in the early centuries of Christianity, this sounds like I'm not going to go on for 3 hours.
Yeah.
But this is important.
Okay.
So in the early centuries of Christianity, early Christian theologians developed 2 hideous ideas
Okay.
that became central to Christian self-understanding.
Okay.
The first of which was this collective accusation that the Jews were somehow responsible for the death of Christ.
Okay.
And of course, we know that this is not only historically untrue. Of course, the Romans were responsible for the death of Christ. But more importantly, we know that this is theologically incorrect as well.
Okay.
Because, of course, in accordance with Catholic teaching, we are responsible for the death of Christ, right? But nonetheless, this accusation that the Jews were collectively responsible for the death of Christ and therefore must be somehow punished for it became deeply embedded in Christian theology and thinking. And then the second of these two ideas, equally as damaging as the first, essentially said that because the Jews, in air quotes, you understand, because the Jews had, quote unquote, killed Christ, God has now said to the Jews, enough, and has broken the covenant with them, leaving Jews now cursed and rejected and condemned. And God, they had said, forged now a new covenant with Christianity, often known in academic circles as this teaching of supersession or replacement theology. These two ideas...
Both rejected.
Well, both of these two ideas became foundational pillars
Okay.
upon which a nearly 2,000-year-old tradition of Christian anti-Semitism would be built. And it would lead to centuries of dehumanization, demonization,
Yes.
forced expulsions, massacres, violence, the list goes on. It's a profoundly tragic history. But in 1965, not coincidentally in the wake of the Holocaust, in 1965, on the heels of the Second Vatican Council, the Catholic Church released a landmark statement known as Nostra Aetate, in Latin, of course, meaning in our time. In our time. And in this statement, the Catholic Church effectively stood up and announced to the world that we were wrong. Jews, the statement makes clear, never should have collectively been blamed for the death of Christ. We were wrong about that.
Yes.
And then secondly, the statement makes clear that the covenant with Jews has never been broken, and that we as Christians have been grafted, as it were, into the covenant, to use Paul's language. One cannot overemphasize how important this statement is.
Yeah.
Because in effect, it aims to reverse a nearly 2,000-year-old tradition of Christian anti-Semitism and to set our two communities down a very different path, one of understanding and dialogue,
Yes.
friendship, right? And as profoundly important as that statement is, my experience has been, and I don't think this is hyperbole or exaggeration, but most Catholics, and I mean just about all, have never heard of it. Nostra Aetate.
Yeah.
When I deliver my lecture series, like I did at the Cathedral of Christ the King or in other Catholic or Christian communities, they've never heard of it. The collective response from attendees is, what is this? And not only have they not heard of Nostra Aetate, but they're unaware of the history behind it that made that statement necessary in the first place. And that has to change. That has to change because, of course, there's no future without memory.
Right.
Right? We have to confront this past as a Christian community, as a Catholic community. But I should stress to you as well that this statement, Nostra Aetate, is, of course, profoundly Catholic. Right? And I find it incredibly beautiful because it's an admission of sin, because it identifies anti-Semitism as a sin. So it's an admission of guilt, and it's an effort to rectify those sins, which, of course, is a very Catholic approach to forgiveness, isn't it?
Right, yes, of course.
So it's almost as if this is the church itself sitting in the confessional, this statement, Nostra Aetate, and I find that very beautiful. And so there's much to be proud of and to celebrate in this statement. And in fact, this year is the 60th anniversary of this proclamation, this
Right.
Nostra Aetate. And so at Marist, on January 21st.
Oh, great. We're going to talk about that now. Okay. No,
May
go ahead. Yeah,
can I mention it?
Yeah, of course.
So on January 21st, we are holding a commemorative event on campus at Marist to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Nostra Aetate. And we are developing and offering this program in partnership with, of course, the Archdiocese of Atlanta.
Right.
And so Archbishop Hartmeyer is coming, and others as well. And it's also being offered in partnership with the American Jewish Committee, the AJC. And so leaders on the AJC are coming for the event as well.
Oh, that's
and
great.
So I'll be offering some remarks at the event, and then we're having a panel discussion with the Archbishop, together with Rabbi Noam, who is one of the most well-known rabbis in the U.S. He's an extraordinary man. So the two of them are going to talk about the importance of Nostra Aetate, which is going to be a great event.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, that'd be great. And repeat that date again.
So it's January 21st, and registration is required, and one can go to the Bearing Witness website at Marist. It's just simply bearingwitness.marist.com, and you can find information on the event.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I remember it'll be a really nice night, I'm sure.
It's going to be beautiful. And among the reasons why we're hosting the event at Marist is because of the statue on our campus.
Please, let's talk about that statue.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I enjoy when I've been to campus. I've had the opportunity to see it, and it's a highlight of your lecture, I think.
Well, it's a highlight of my life at the school. I have to say, every time I walk past this statue, it warms my heart.
Yeah.
It really does. So for those of you who may be listening who have not seen it or perhaps have not heard of it, you've got to get to Marist to come over and see it. But let me give you just a very brief background. So I mentioned previously this long and tragic history of Christian anti-Semitism in the way that it was rooted in these two foundational teachings. Again, first, that the Jews were collectively responsible for the death of Christ, and then secondly, that the covenant with Jews had been broken. Both of those teachings were rejected and reversed in 1965 through Nostra Aetate. Now, throughout the centuries, these two teachings were not some obscure theologies. They were central to Christian self-understanding. This anti-Judaism got in there very deep in Christian theology. And they found expressions in many ways, including in religious iconography and art. So, for example, on the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, and in fact on many cathedrals in Europe, there are these two depictions on the front facade of Notre Dame that flank the central entrance of the cathedral, clearly suggesting a kind of pride of place.
Correct.
These statues are enormous, 15, 18 feet tall, and they are statues of two women. On the left side of the entrance, correct, is a statue known in Latin as Ecclesia, which simply just means the church. And she symbolizes the Catholic Church in particular, or Christianity in general. And she is shown, depicted in a kind of neoclassical sort of iconography. She is shown to be crowned and triumphant, strong, standing erect and tall. And she's holding in her right hand the symbol of her faith tradition, the cup, the chalice, the Eucharist, identifying her as Christianity. In her left hand, she's holding the medieval symbol for power and authority, the staff, right? The statue that sits alongside Ecclesia, again, just as enormous, just flanking the other side of the central entrance of the cathedral, is a statue known, contrastingly, as Synagoga. And, of course, she symbolizes Judaism. And she is shown quite differently. She is shown clearly with a crown that has fallen, that is now lying at her feet.
Broken crown.
No, well, the crown isn't broken. It's just fallen.
Fallen, okay.
Correct. In her right hand, like Ecclesia, Synagoga is also holding the symbol of her own faith tradition, the tablets of the law, the Ten Commandments, identifying her, again, not just as Jewish, but as Judaism itself.
Okay.
And again, in her left hand, she's also holding that medieval symbol for power and authority, the staff, but the staff is shown to be broken. In fact, it's broken twice. And then further up, there is a snake strategically wrapped around her head, blinding her, which invokes the imagery of Satan from the Garden of Eden. These two statues are effectively teaching both of these rather profoundly anti-Semitic ideas. One, again, that the Jews were somehow collectively responsible for the death of Christ, and then secondly, the covenant with Jews has been broken. Hence the fallen crown. The symbolism seems to say that there was a time when the Jews were crowned, that is to say, covenanted, but that crown has fallen. That covenant has been broken, hence the broken staff. They are now in league with the devil, and moreover, God has now crowned and forged a new covenant with Christianity, again, leaving Jews cursed and rejected. And again, I want to stress to you where these statues are. You know, they're not 200 feet in the air where you can hardly see them. No, they have been brought down to eye level. They flank the central entrance of the cathedral, which clearly demonstrates that these two teachings of deicide, we call it, and supersession, these were not two obscure theologies. As I say, they were central to Christian self-understanding. And you find these representations of these two statues all over the place, mainly throughout Central Europe. But this statue on our campus,
Yes.
this is just extraordinary. Some years ago, for the, let me think, what was it, the 55th anniversary, I think, of Nostra Aetate, the university, or rather St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, has this great institution, in many ways an inspiration for my own Bearing Witness Institute at Marist. They have an institution on their campus dedicated to Christian-Jewish dialogue. This is an institution that started in the wake of Nostra Aetate as a way to implement what this statement means. To celebrate the 55th, if I'm getting that number correct, anniversary of Nostra Aetate, the leadership at St. Joseph's reached out to a local Philadelphia area sculptor and asked if he could sculpt something to commemorate this extraordinary moment. He wasn't quite sure what to make, and so he began a series of meetings with some of the professors there. And the president of the college and the Archbishop of Philadelphia, others, kind of brainstorming ideas. And he came up with this design where he reimagines ecclesia and synagoga. So he's taken these two female figures, which still adorn the front facade of Notre Dame, and he has them now seated. And they are both crowned, which is in keeping, of course, with Nostra Aetate. And they are, if you look carefully, they're essentially almost like symmetrical, mirrored representations of each other, implying a kind of fairness, equality, if you will. And they are both holding their sacred texts, like on their laps, widely, these oversized texts. So, for example, synagoga is holding the Torah, and ecclesia is shown to be holding the Gospels. But if you look at the statue, as they're seated shoulder to shoulder, they are actually looking at each other's sacred texts.
It's beautiful.
It's extraordinarily beautiful. And what they are doing, of course, is that they are learning from each other. And what he's aimed to do, again, in partnership with St. Joseph's, is to reimagine this profoundly troubled past.
Right.
And because we know the power of imagery, right? And so when I saw this statue on the campus of St. Joseph 5 years ago or more in an article in the New York Times, I called the artist and I asked him, could you make a second edition of the statue for our campus in Atlanta at the school called Marist School? And he said that he would, but then he told me how much it costs, right?
Right.
It's very expensive.
Okay.
So thus began this quest to figure out a way to bring this statue to our campus. And it took several years, but through the help of very generous donors, we were able to hire him. It took him about a year to refashion a whole new bronze statue. We had a beautiful pedestal fashioned out of marble, and we brought it to, or rather a granite, brought it to our campus, swung it over on a big crane, set it atop this pedestal, and it now adorns our campus at Marist. And our students at Marist anyway, most of whom have taken my Holocaust seminar class, they know exactly what that statue means.
Sure.
And they understand its importance. But I have to say, and again, forgive me, I feel like I'm talking so much. I apologize. But I have to stress. I have to stress how some months later, after we installed the statue and had some landscape architecture, we had a team come in and kind of redesign the area a bit. We had this lovely dedication event. In fact, Bishop Kanzen was there, Rabbi Peter Berg from the temple had come, and others as well. We flew the artist down from Philadelphia to speak at the dedication event. It was this lovely occasion. And I remember vividly feeling that evening after I offered my own remarks at the event, I remember feeling, and this won't surprise anyone, I remember feeling like two things. One, as extraordinary as this statue is, it loses so much of its power, and I mean that word because I find it very powerful. It loses so much of its power unless you know the history behind it. And as I said earlier, most Christians are utterly unaware of this history. I mean, look, even myself and all those Catholic schools that I mentioned, none of this was ever taught to me. And that has to change. And so, secondly, I would stress that the second thing that came over me that evening at the dedication, and again, this won't surprise you either, is that, it's just not enough to install a statue,
right?
Right? If we are to make good, as it were, on a statement like Nostra Aetate, we, and I mean Christians and Jews, we have to be doing together what the statue inspires. Christians and Jews coming together, learning from one another. And so it was really that evening, 4 years ago, I think now, where I really started thinking about, okay, how can we do that? How can we actually do what this statue inspires? And thus was born the idea of building this Bearing Witness Institute to promote the work that statue inspires of interfaith dialogue. Another ambition, of course, is my lecture series, which teaches the history behind that statue and the important transformative theology of Nostra Aetate. And I have to say, it's gone exceptionally well. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And about the statue, which is amazing, that was a statue that Pope Francis saw blessed right on his trip to Philadelphia. So that kind of a papal seal of approval, if you will, about what the work of the think tank at St. Joseph's, and a little bit of inspiration for yourself to be like, oh, okay, I'm down the right path.
Yeah, and I've actually been in conversation with the Secretariat of State at the Vatican because we're trying to see if they would consider, and they're still deliberating it, I believe, if they would consider having a third statue made and having it installed somewhere at the Vatican.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, you are just a font of information and a lot of knowledge. And I know that you are having adult education classes or a lecture series coming up.
Yes, that's right.
Do you still have room?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Oh, no, yeah, I think so. If you're interested in what Mr. Murphy has been talking about, this relationship of powerful, sad, but also hope-filled message, people can go to the Bearing Witness website. Correct?
That's right, yeah, bearingwitness.marist.com.
Okay.
And up pops a little window about this particular lecture series that I'll be giving in January and February.
Great.
So it's over, just real quick, it's over nearly successive Sundays, 2 to 4 in the afternoon. And registration is required, and you can register online for it at again, bearingwitness.marist.com. It's going to be great. So the first evening is on anti-Semitism. The second afternoon is on the Holocaust itself. And then the third class, where we have a Holocaust survivor who's speaking at the event.
Wow, powerful.
Yeah.
That's
very
amazing.
powerful. Mm-hmm.
There's no charge, so if people
There is a charge.
Oh, there is a charge.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
What's the fee?
It's $125.
Oh, $125.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
for
we
this time.
have varying expenses. We hire the Brookhaven local police to monitor the event, of course.
Sure.
all that.
But if you are interested at all, and as I said, I saw you kind of condensed everything to one for 2 or 3, maybe 4 hours at the Alliance Theater,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a tremendous program that you have organized. So we spoke about the upcoming celebration.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that again, just so folks hear
so
about
it's
the day?
January. I think it's a Wednesday, January 21st, 6:30 to 7 is a pre-reception. This is
Okay.
on the campus of Marist, and then the event will begin around 7:15.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it'll go to about 9.
And again, registration is required for that through
Correct.
your website.
Correct.
Okay, great. And I want to end this. Thank you so much for your time. I just want to give you an opportunity of, a year into your program, right? Since the formal founding, what have you seen bear fruit? Like, what have you seen that gives you hope for this type of initiative? Because, God, we don't have to look far. Just this past weekend, right, about the violence in Australia.
Of course.
Have you seen fruits that you're like, yeah, this is really good, this is working out?
Well, yeah, I'll come back to the example that I was, again, admittedly long-windedly talking about earlier, which was the lecture that I gave at the Cathedral of Christ the King.
Yeah.
So again, about a year and a half ago, when they reached out to me in advance of that opportunity to ask if I would come in and teach a class, I asked if they would consider offering my lecture series to their congregates in partnership with the AA Synagogue in Buckhead, kind of a neighboring synagogue. And the leadership at the Cathedral of Christ the King said yes. And so I put them in touch with the leadership at the AA Synagogue, again, Rabbi Rosenthal. And both of their communities sponsored the event. And I suggested that, again, because it was a 2-evening class, that the first class be taught at the cathedral, and then the second class be taught at the synagogue, the AA Synagogue, the Avath Ahem Synagogue, which they agreed. And we had just about 500 people in attendance in the first evening, again, at Cathedral. The second evening at the AA Synagogue was especially meaningful because it was actually in their sanctuary. But this was, for many attendees, this was the first time they had set foot in each other's sacred spaces. And so it added a whole other layer of meaning. But the hope of this interfaith lecture series of mine is to create a long-standing relationship between those two communities. And that bore fruit, to get to your question, with the event this year on Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Rosenthal, who now has a working relationship with Monsignor McNamee at the Cathedral of Christ the King, the rabbi just reached out to the pastor and said, would you mind coming to our service for Yom Kippur and bringing the Archbishop with you? And we would like to have a panel discussion with them. And so you had referenced this event, and it was just extraordinary. I moderated the discussion, which meant I just asked them questions. But it was so powerful for the Archbishop of Atlanta to be seated in front of that congregation and to express such deep reverence for this Jewish tradition of Yom Kippur.
Yes.
It was just beautiful, and Monsignor McNamee as well. And so that is exactly what the lecture series is designed to do. It's meant to invite ongoing conversation and dialogue.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, look, you've been so good with your time, and our conversation could go ongoing. But we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much
it's my pleasure.
about telling us about Bearing Witness Institute at the Marist School. And please check out the website and register for those interesting classes if you'd like. And thanks very much. Take care. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Andrew.
At the Marist School.
Of course, yes. Thank you so much.
Very good, very good.
A wonderful conversation for us all to hear. Thank you, Andrew. Learn more about the upcoming Nostra Aetate commemoration at archatl.com and find more Catholic news at georgiabulletin.org. We hope you will join us again on the first and third Mondays of the month for new episodes of Bearing Light.